Hey everyone, Gill Gross here. Post-match, Novak Djokovic versus Tomas Machac, Australian Open 2025, third round. If you're not here for spoilers, click off the video. Novak Djokovic dispatches the talented Czech in straights. A very dominant showing and just about as impressive as a third round win gets. It's only the third round. Obviously, you don't have the trophy in your hands yet. But as far as third rounds are concerned, that's basically as good as it gets from Novak Djokovic. I feel like he got a terrible draw here. Regardless of who was going to win that second round match between Riley Opelka and Tomas Machac, we always kind of knew it was going to be tough in the third round. And if you just look at Machac, starting off before we get into the match, he is 9th in ELO ratings, which is the tennis abstract metric that takes into account the quality of opponents who you are beating and also takes into account more of your recent form instead of your 52-week form. He is 9th by that metric. And if you take a look at his matchups in the last 3-4 months against top players, really since the U.S. Open, he just held a match point against Fritz at the United Cup. He beat Hurkacz. He was really close to beating Ruud, lost a tight 3-setter, was in every set. He got 2 wins over Tommy Paul in the fall. He has a win over Dimitrov in the fall, and obviously has the win over Alcaraz in the fall. So, I mean, he's just picked up a great collection of wins, a great collection of close matches against top players, and he had only lost once in straight sets since the U.S. Open, and that was against Jannik Sinner, although there had been 5 retirements for Machac, which was probably the biggest red flag in his resume coming in. But Djokovic pulls a Sinner, beats him in straights. First guy since Sinner to do it. Completely different player than he was in the first 2 rounds. Utterly dialed in off of both wings. Extremely clean off the ground. Incredible control where it just felt like the ball was just like sitting on his string bed and he could manipulate it however he wanted. And lethal changes of direction are really the results of that. Depth on command. Moved well, defended well. You really can't poke any holes in Djokovic's performance as far as his baseline game is concerned. And by the way, he served great, but we'll get to that in a moment. Let's start with the baseline dynamic here. Machac, particularly in the first half of the match, set 1, vast majority of set 2, was also playing really consistent baseline tennis. Not missing very often, maybe a hair more erratic than Novak, but ultimately very buttoned up. But you felt like in order for Machac to maintain that high level of consistency, he had to play it a bit safe. And at times when he had balls to potentially attack, not that he wouldn't attack it, but he was lacking some of the brutality necessary. I mean, it was going to always take something really, really good. You almost needed to blow the ball past Novak in order to finish points against him because he was defending so well. But it also did feel like Machac just couldn't let himself or get himself to fully let go. And the pace, the forcefulness probably just needed to be a little bit more a lot of the time. Not to mention the directional aggression for Machac was, I'd say, less than what I'm used to seeing. He was a little bit reluctant to go down the line. A bit predictable on the cross court. I think Novak sniffed that out. I think especially in the forehand exchanges, Djokovic was kind of sitting on the cross court, using that to his advantage by cheating over there a little bit, moving early over there a little bit, leaning. And when you do that, obviously you have a better chance to win that exchange with superior ball striking. You are able to get into position a little bit earlier. You're going to be more on balance. You're going to execute your changes of direction with more consistency. So that's a big deal for Novak, that he was just kind of sitting on Machac's forehand cross court, not too worried that he was going to go down the line. So again, Machac was not missing very often at all, and neither was Novak, but Tomas was a bit timid in the way he was playing, and Novak was not. But because Machac is also such a great athlete, it was also really hard for Novak to finish points. And that is why this match got very physical and why it was really entertaining. And even the first set, 6-1 Novak, great points, very competitive points, a lot of high-octane tennis, high quality. I mean, one of the better 6-1 sets you'll see. And again, the reason for that, great movers, incredible athleticism and scrambling for Machac, not missing very much. Novak dialed in, as we discussed. So that was making for very entertaining tennis. But the key difference here was it was too entertaining on Machac's serve. Like, you were watching it and you're like, wow, great point, great point, great point, great point. And then at a certain point, you're thinking, okay, there's actually way too many great points happening on Machac's serve. That's bad news for Tomas. He was not getting unreturned serves. He was not playing with a ton of intention on his +1 ball, and therefore not finishing a lot of +1s. So he's just getting neutralized in his kind of serve +1, and his service games are essentially baseline games, like neutral rally, neutral rally, neutral rally. And I'm telling you, especially for the first set and a half, I was tracking it, and I was like, neutral rally, neutral rally, neutral rally, neutral rally. You're never going to hold serve on a consistent basis if that is what your service games look like. At best, you're in a 50-50 situation there, and you need to be winning more than 50% of your serve points to win a match. And by the way, 50-50, that is exactly what the percentage was through 2 sets on Machac's serve. He won 50% of his serve points. Novak, on the other hand, he almost every service game, he's going to win 2 or 3 boring points every time. When Djokovic went up a break in the second, his serve carried him home basically the rest of the way. Next 2 service games, he got a lot of free points. And in the third set, it was pure dominance with Djokovic's first serve. It was a weapon. Ace rate, 25%. Won 16 of 18 first serve points. Made 75% in. So he didn't have to work that hard in the third set. He didn't have to play a bunch of great neutral baseline rallies in the third set. It didn't need to be entertaining. And he doesn't want it to be entertaining. He wants to hit good first serves and call it a day. That's what he was able to do. Machac never got to that, really. It did get better for Machac on serve towards the end of the third set. Not the end of the third set, but after he went down a break in the third set, he did start to get more out of his serve. After playing a horrendous, worst game you can possibly play to start the third set. He double faulted twice. He missed an overhead. He made an error. You can't really play a worse game. After that, he got more out of his serve, but it was just way too late. Novak never felt in trouble here. There was maybe one thing you could point to if you want to say what was Djokovic's, shaky moment or whatever you might want to categorize it as, which was his sort of physical struggles at the start of the second set. I think there were hints of it throughout the first set. Again, they're playing tons of long rallies here. And they're really dynamic baseline points, and a lot of them. So, yeah, it's physical. And there was a point where that got the better of Novak. But he managed it really well in 2 ways. I'll say that the first way he managed it well was pushing right through it. And I think you can look at some of the body language in between points that tell one story, but then when you look at what was actually happening during the points, I don't think Novak was ever really all that compromised. But then certainly he was better after the medical timeout. So that seemed to sort of stabilize the situation for him physically. And he never really got back into the red. I don't think the match ever got as physical as it did at the start of the second. But regardless, Djokovic never got back into the red. And he really was under control for the rest of the way. I also want to hit on the mental side of things. Djokovic was incredibly charged. He was reactive and expressive in between points. He said after the match in his interview that he was hot-headed at the time. And, that's because I think towards the end, he just started getting into it with some fans. But in terms of the intensity from Novak, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't really get much higher. He chucked his racket up a break in the third. So remember, he's up 2 sets and a break, and he is demanding the maximum from himself every single point. That was just the level of, I almost think, heightened energy for Novak in this match. It was really, really at the highest level. And for Machac, extremely subdued. To me, he did not have his typical presence. Brad Stein on the World Feed broadcast was harping on this quite a bit as well. I've always known Machac as a guy who likes the bright lights, who rises against top players. But I feel like there was a hint of stage fright here because he was very flatline. And to me, that's just not how he typically is, which suggests that maybe he was a little bit overwhelmed by the moment, playing Novak Djokovic on Laver at the Australian Open. He is a player who needs to go on hot streaks, needs to, or likes to at least, ride waves of energy. If I were to levy a criticism at Machac, it's that it can be very up and down, up and down. That's not even what happened in this match. It never really got up. Not that it was like, not that he played awful, right? But energy-wise, it was low. It was low for almost the entire time. He wasn't really willing to spark himself with positive emotion, which was interesting to see. As far as what surprised me in this match, first of all, not the result. Just because I decided that I was going to pick the upset here doesn't mean that I'm surprised when it doesn't happen. The only thing about the result that I would say surprised me was just how dominant and lopsided it was. But by no means am I surprised that Djokovic won the match. That would be lunacy. That would be totally idiotic, right? But as far as the individual things in the match that that did surprise me, the biggest thing is just Djokovic's tip-top level, right? Just tip-top, razor-sharp level. And that, I wasn't expecting to see that after the first 2 rounds because he didn't have that in the first 2 rounds. So that was the first thing. And then the second thing was the fact that there was just zero purchase on the Machac serve. And I don't view him as a server that can just get totally shut down like that. And I know Novak is the greatest returner of all time, but I also thought that Machac probably should have been able to muster maybe something there, not just go completely AWOL for a set and a half as far as damaging first serves. It just didn't seem like that was there. And then the third thing that surprised me was Machac playing a little bit timid and never having those big moments of energy and surge that you normally see in a Tomas Machac match. So I'd say those would be the surprises for me. But let me end on this statement. Djokovic playing like that, only 2 dudes in the field who have a chance if Djokovic plays like that. Jannik Sinner and Carlos Alcaraz. Those are the 2 guys who would have a chance with Djokovic operating at that level of serving and ball striking. So really a phenomenal win, a phenomenal match for Novak Djokovic's prospects. If he can keep up that level, he will be a force to be reckoned with. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.